Hello, hello, hello. So what is going on, guys? So I have a bit of a story for you. So I have basically just what I want to talk about is phobias. In particular, phobias that I have. Well, actually, just one phobia in particular. And you know how some fears you have are rational. I myself, I have a fear of heights. I know that from a certain point, if I fall to the ground, I'll probably one of two things. Either one, fracture my spinal column, or two, die. So, very rational fear there. However, you know, there are some fears that are completely irrational. You know, some people are afraid of the outdoors, large open spaces. Some people are afraid of cheese. And then there are people like me who are afraid of moths. Yeah, the little flying insect moths. So, I'm going to tell you exactly how I came to develop a phobia of moths. Um, so when I was a kid, I really didn't mind moths. In fact, I used to, a lot of times when I was playing out in the backyard when I was a little kid, you'd see like the little tiny white moths just flying around, and I'd used to catch them. So, you know, I never minded them. I started not to like them so much when I had an interesting encounter with a very large moth. I was probably about 12 at the time, and my grandma and my grandpa, they owned a ranch a couple hours outside of the city where I live in. And one day I was at their place. I was inside. I was sitting in the dining room, has this great big bay window by it, and a door that leads out to the deck. And sitting on the screen door was this great big, disgusting looking moth that, I kid you not, well, maybe I'm a little bit exaggerating here because I mean this did happen so long ago, but I swear it was as big as my hand. This massive, thick body, and these huge, monstrous eyes, and these fuzzy antennae like a feather on the front of its head. It was really just gross looking, and I think it was probably from that point that I wasn't too particularly fond of them from that moment on. Fast forward about 7 years, and I'm on my mission. So at the time, I was in a place called Vernon. It's in British Columbia. It's in the Okanagan Mountain Range, which is kind of like it runs from about the southeast border of BC up until about maybe a third or halfway up the boundary there. And Vernon is kind of close to the middle of the Okanagan. So I was there. I'd been there for about a month and a half, and we were out knocking doors, and I was out knocking doors with my companion, and we came to this newer looking townhouse complex, and it looked like the JWs had been there just before we got there, because there were a whole bunch of tiny little pamphlets stuck in the door, and we're like, this ain't gonna fly. So what we did is we took down all their pamphlets and replaced them with Mormon.org cards. And, you know, they weren't really these big pamphlets. It was like a glossy sheet of paper, maybe folded in half. It was nothing all that fancy, nothing really to it. And so we took all of them down, and out of curiosity, my companion's like, huh, I wonder what's in these pamphlets. And as he opens up this pamphlet, out from the middle of it flew this great big brown moth that somehow, I mean, the thing was massive, and bearing in mind this pamphlet wasn't that thick, it was one sheet of paper, And this pamphlet didn't look anything out of the ordinary. It didn't look like there was something wedged in between it. But suddenly, miraculously, this brown moth just spawned out of the middle of this JW pamphlet and scared the living bejesus out of me and my companion. Like, you should have seen the expression on our faces. We opened it up, we're like, oh! Oh, it was like you couldn't even, like, how could words can't even put into, I can't even put into words like the shock and the horror we felt as we saw this thing literally lunge out of this glossy sheet of paper. You know, it was ridiculous. From that moment on, I referred to that incident on my mission as the demon moth encounter. Yeah. But basically, from that point on, whenever we had a moth in the apartment, I would just those emotions of having this moth materialize out of this pamphlet just would come rushing back, and I would freak out. Like, no word of lie. If you ask any of my companions who I was with when we had a moth in the apartment, I was absolutely, it was embarrassing. I was absolutely terrified of this freaking little winged insect. It didn't matter how big it was. You know, I think that compounded with the fact that, you know, I had heard all these horror stories about moths being curious and climbing into the various orifices in your head, like your nose, your ear, into your mouth. In fact, I actually had somebody tell me a story about somebody that they knew had a moth crawl into their ear when they were asleep, woke up, could hear the moth flapping around inside their inner ear, and of course they couldn't get it out because it crawled so deep into their ear canal that they had to have surgery to get it removed. You know, that compounded with my experience, yeah, I'm not a big fan. It's so stupid, but it's true. And then the next experience that really just contributed to this whole entire thing happened to me 2 years ago. It was, I went on a camping trip myself and about 8 other friends. We went to a place called Camp Tanner, and you know, we were at this camping site. We had a little cookout house to store all our food and stuff in there. And the first night that we were there, we decided to play a card game inside the cookout house. My buddy Todd, he brought the card game Munchkins, if any of you have ever played that before. He brought that with him, and so we played that until about 1 o'clock in the morning. And as we were playing, the cookout house had this great big gap at the bottom of the door, so, you know, things were flying in the whole entire time. You know, nothing you wouldn't expect being out there, but oh my gosh, this great big moth flew into the cookout house, and this thing, we dubbed it the King of the Moths. It was so big. And it starts flying around the cookout house. At first it was at the back, you know, furthest corner away from us. But of course, it starts flying closer and closer and closer to us. And I'm staring at this thing. I'm like, don't come near me. And the rest of them, they're not really paying it much mind until it starts coming a bit closer. And it starts flying around our heads. And at that point, everybody starts paying attention. They're not too particularly fond of this thing being around us, and so we're swatting at it as it's coming near us. and then it does. and then it flies and lands on my friend Darren's chest, like right here. And as soon as it lands on him, he's like, crap. So instinctively he grabs the thing and tosses it to the floor. And then one of us goes over and stomps it because it had crawled over near to the door on the cookhouse. The cookhouse stomps it on the floor. There's just this puddle of king moths. Oh, for the next like day and a half, that's all we could talk about. It was too priceless. Uh, I mean, I mean this moth was just like well, it was terrorizing me, but I mean it was terrorizing the rest of us because this thing it was enormous, but I mean Darren definitely got the worst of it. But I mean, yeah, yeah, it's just experiences like that just keep, it's stupid stuff like that just kind of contribute to these irrational fears. You know, I still have this phobia of moths just because of those experiences that I had. But I mean, funny thing is, I had no problem with butterflies. I don't know. Doesn't matter how big they are. They're just I don't have a problem with them. You know? They're pretty beautiful. Maybe it's well. In addition to the experiences that I've had, maybe it's probably has to do with the I just don't like the way that they look. I mean, like some moths are just grotesque, just look grotesquely bloated. But I mean, you compare it to a butterfly. Butterfly's nice and slender. The great big wings and the little antennae and all that stuff. You know, I don't know. It's like I said, it's an irrational fear. It doesn't make any sense, but I hate moths. What can I say? So I mean, there you go. That's my story. And it's a little bit on the kind of was whatever, but yeah, there you go. So there you have it. If you like this video, feel free to leave a comment or leave a like or don't. It's your choice. If you're new here, you can subscribe or don't. Like I said, it's your choice. But anyways, I think that's all from me for now. Sorry it's taken me a while to get a video up. I know a couple of people said that they really like stories that I tell, and like I said before, I don't really have a ton of stories to tell, but as often as I'll have more to tell at some point, but there you go. So, bye-bye.